Today is Earth Day, so we take a look at two popular stores of value, gold and Bitcoin, and compare them and look at both of their environmental impacts. And just like we can bet on finding more gold every 4 years, we can bet on Bitcoin supply issuance getting cut in half every 4 years, thanks to events like the halving, instilling more and more confidence to global users who invest in Bitcoin. One thing we can also bet on is the value of fiat currency continuing to go down over time. For this reason and several others, we explore exactly why Bitcoin has a use case or real-world utility. Welcome to the Bitcoin Daily Show. I'm Dante Cook, head of Swan Business. I just wanted to start off today's episode by saying thank you. You helped us to do something that was a goal of ours, but we didn't really share publicly, was getting to 100K before halving day. And no, I'm not talking about the price. You helped us get to 100,000 subscribers on this YouTube channel before our halving. And for that, we say thank you. If you continue to get value from these shows, like this video, share them with people who you want to learn more about Bitcoin, and also subscribe to the channel. And always, if you have questions about Bitcoin, just know that this isn't just a show that we put out there to attract more users and viewers. It's a way for us to educate millions of people about Bitcoin and its important and growing role in the society that we want in the future. So if you have questions, send me an email, daily@swanbitcoin.com, and I personally respond and answer these. And with that, let's get into it. Happy Earth Day, everybody. I don't really celebrate Earth Day, but in light of the people who do, I wanted to look at Bitcoin and compare it to gold and the impacts that both of them have on the environment. If you look at our oldest store of value, gold, you can see that it has major negative impacts on the environment, like deforestation, like the fact that many miners mix mercury with sediments in order to separate gold from the other elements, and the fact that gold mining typically causes water pollution and biodiversity loss. And it just plain old uses more energy than Bitcoin. And let's look at Bitcoin on the other hand. Bitcoin has a sustainability index of 55%, meaning that 55% of all of the energy used to power Bitcoin's network comes from a sustainable or a renewable source. Everyone wants to aim for this neutral 2050 net carbon emissions goal. Bitcoin is one of the only industries in the world that actually has the potential to produce negative carbon emissions, because typically Bitcoin miners are placed on sites of free, cheap, or even emission polluting energy sources, like methane gas flaring. And by capturing it, Bitcoin miners are actually reducing the amount of emissions in the atmosphere, not increasing it. Aside from the environmental challenges, we don't even need to get into the political and societal impacts that gold has had on us. Listen to Michael Saylor talk about all of the different wars that gold has caused throughout centuries.
Gold invites violence. Alexander, gallivanted around the world to seize gold. Livy tells the story of 1,000 Roman sieges in order to steal the gold. Caesar sacked Gaul to take their gold. Kublai Khan seized the gold. Pizarro seized gold from the Incas. Cortez seized gold from the Aztecs. Charles I seized the gold from all the British nobles. The Prussians seized gold from the French in 1871. In World War I, everybody seized the gold. Lenin seized gold from the church in 1922. Roosevelt seized everybody's gold in 1933. Stalin seized the gold of the Spaniards in 1936. Churchill took everybody's gold in 1940 at the onset of the war. At Bretton Woods, the United States seized the world's gold and then, took it hostage. And then Nixon killed all the hostages in 1971. Gold's always getting seized. The problem is you can't secure gold. The cost to secure it goes up with the number of nodes or caches of gold, the value of the gold in the cache. It's regulated. You have to secure it with guns, people, steel, concrete, carbon. It doesn't scale. If you want to stress test it, you ask yourself the question, when I give this thing to 5 billion people, how much is it going to cost me? So gold transportation costs don't scale, because the more transactions, the more the value of the transactions, the more jurisdictions, brings more cost and more regulation, and you need guns, people, vehicles, and carbon is too expensive for most transactions. Gold audit won't scale, because the more nodes, the more transactions, the more value, the more cost, and the regulators get involved. It's very people intensive, it's infrequent, slow, it's unreliable, it's a risk factor. Gold security transport and audit are regulated by every nodal jurisdiction. They're corruptible, they're uncompetitive, they're antiquated, they're elitist, they're ineffective, and they're out of reach for 99.9% of the population.
And speaking of Bitcoin and mining, on the epoch or 840,000 block, the block space was so valuable that transaction fees amounted to 37.6 Bitcoin, or roughly $2.5 million. That's a record that people have paid to be included in the Bitcoin's block space. And people wanted to commemorate that moment. They did it in a number of different ways, which some can be considered controversial, which we'll get into in another episode. Ordinals, runes, and other things that may have contributed to higher transaction fees. But one thing is for certain, the supply issuance of Bitcoin got cut to 3 1/8 per block from 6.25. This is a complete contrast to gold, which we continue to find more of, like a volcano spewing $6,000 worth of gold every single day. Talk about an unlimited supply. We know exactly what's going to happen with Bitcoin's monetary policy because its policy is written into code. And just like we know about Bitcoin's monetary policy, we know that we will continue to find more and more gold every single year. Bitcoin's monetary policy is dialed in, sort of like Scotty Scheffler right now, who's able to literally call the distance that his ball will go based upon the driver in the club that he's using.
This is driver, start at 305.
303.
There we go. New 3-wood. Let's go 268.
268.
Okay, I was making sure he wasn't lying.
No?
5-iron, 210.
210 on the dot.
Point zero?
No, not quite.
Oh.
You're off by like a foot. You're off by a foot.
Let's go 72.
72.
72 with the 8-iron.
72.
That's a point zero.
Point zero.
That's a point zero. 60 degree, go 105.
105.
Oh, 106. Dang it.
And just like we can bank on Scotty Scheffler knowing exactly how far his driver will go, for example, and how much Bitcoin will be issued next year and the year after that, we can also bank on fiat currencies going to zero over time. Here's an example. There's a story of a man finding his grandmother's life savings in a shoebox 18 years after she died. She had stored and saved $2 peso bills, which aren't even in circulation these days, that was worth a few $1,000s at the time, and now we know that those pesos are only worth about $25. You know what you used to be able to bank on? That U.S. Treasuries would be the most reliable, safe, and liquid asset that you as an individual or a global sovereign country could invest in. And even that is going by the wayside, because after this weekend, U.S. Congress voted that the U.S. government can not only seize Russia's U.S. Treasury assets, but give them to Ukraine to fund their war. The U.S. Treasury market is no longer the global, safe, and de facto place for you to put your excess reserves and savings into, which is why almost none of China and Russia's interdealings are done with U.S. dollars anymore. So for all the people that say that Bitcoin has no utility or no value, well, I think it does have a value in a world of increasing censorship, increasing seizure, and fiat currencies going to zero. Listen to Swan Managing Director Stephen Lepka talk about the real utility value of Bitcoin.
At least with equities, there's earnings every quarter, and there are events that, change the fundamentals of a stock, right? So what's going to be next? Like it's not like you have earnings every quarter for Bitcoin. So, piggybacking on what Austin said, how is this going to continue to grow outside of product innovation, outside of having events?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's one that many people, before they kind of get into the industry or get into the asset class, I think it's one of the top questions of like, well, how do you value this thing? What gives it value? It doesn't have cash flows. It's not a company. And it's a very valid question. Ultimately, Bitcoin's price right now is driven by adoption. It's driven by people seeing value in what it gives them. Now, the main function it serves right now is as a store of value or as a savings technology. And so people might see that as like, oh, well, that's not really utility. Like that's not a use case. But I mean, that is a use case, right? Like if you live in a country where if you sell a piece of property and your only option is to hold it in their currency or their stock market, and this is an inflationary economy with a weak stock market, and like let's be clear, like the US stock market has been the best performing stock market in the world for a long time, and literally everything else has performed worse than it substantially. You have a savings problem, and having a vehicle in a medium where both you can save value and also that value is not prone to confiscation, it's not prone to certain risks, you can transact with that value globally. Well, that is something a lot of people find utility in. So that is a use case. And that is something that year after year, globally, more people choose to use Bitcoin to store part of their wealth. And the more people that do that, the more Bitcoin is worth. In the same way you might value gold, right? Like gold does not have cash flows, but gold is worth trillions of dollars. Why is gold worth trillions of dollars? It's not the industrial use cases. It's not jewelry. If that's all gold had, it would be a 90% lower valuation than where it's at. It has value because globally humans use it to store monetary savings. And Bitcoin is a novel, and I would even say a revolutionary breakthrough in the ability to do that. Now, will other things happen? Will people use it as a payment network? Will people use it to build other technologies? I'm sure these are things that happen, right? And those things reinforce Bitcoin's value proposition, but it has a very strong value proposition independent of those forces.
And hey, it's not just Swan members. Even the IMF admits that Bitcoin is a critical and important channel to send remittances and avoid unjust capital controls in other countries, specifically poor ones. It's weird. After this weekend, when the fees were extremely high and have since gone back down to normal levels, people said that Bitcoin's blockchain was unsuccessful because nobody used it. And now, when people use it and fees are high, they say that it's also unsuccessful. So, what is it? Either no one's using it and it's unsuccessful, or everyone's using it and it is successful. Have you ever seen a technology that is being adopted both locally in a local community and globally by rich nations and poor nations, by rich people and poor people simultaneously at the same time with no credits, no government incentives, or no collective top-down organization saying that this is what you need to use? It's absolutely incredible if you think about it. I mean, look at this. The majority of Bitcoin transactions between 2022 and 2023 actually came from Africa and not North America. You can see the distribution of countries and geographies and places that are using Bitcoin for its intended purpose: peer-to-peer currency without a third party in the middle. Bitcoin continues to shine in ways that gold can't. Bitcoin continues to provide banking solutions and a store of value to the global unbanked in a way that gold can't. And Bitcoin mining continues to provide benefits to the environment in ways that gold is providing negative consequences to our environment. And we continue to be bullish. So with that, we're signing off for today. This is Dante Cook with Swan.com. Happy stacking.